to Sport 101. So let's start another episode. I'm Flavia Lopez, your host today, and I'm not alone. Actually, today another host we have here is G. Hi, G. So, and
Hi,
of
everyone.
course, today we have another guest joining us as well. Today, guest is Miguel, a business leader at Microsoft and advocate like for gaming, and like he has a lot of history in gaming and engineering, right, for us and business. um and his work help everyone gaming in their houses, but no one better than himself to introduce. So Miguel, tell us.
To this year's
Hello.
set.
Yeah. Hi. I'm Miguel Gil. Originally, I'm from Venezuela, so very close to you guys in
Yeah.
Brazil. Um, and my career in gaming is kind of like I'll be the first to admit is by luck and by chances of life. So let me tell you what that means. So I went to school in Venezuela. I'm an engineer, a mechanical engineer, and I started working professionally in Venezuela for Procter and Gamble. But I started working in the finance side of the thing. So once I finished my degree on engineering, I had an opportunity to work on finance. We absolutely know finance training, and then that's where my journey in the world of finance and business started. So after a few years working in Venezuela and for Procter and Gamble, decided that I wanted to pursue business school and get educated on the business side because I was educated as an engineer. So that led me to pursue a postgraduate degree in Barcelona, in Spain, and it was a specific program for non-business people. So all of us in the class were doctors, architects, engineers, anything that has any career that has no um, uh, business background. That's what that class was for. So after a year there and finishing the degree, I wanted to pursue what is called business school, or Masters in Business Administration, an MBA, as it's popularly called. And that moved me to the US. So I did that in the US in a university in Florida, and it's called Stetson University. And when I finished school, I was looking for opportunities to work, and I happened to go to a career fair. And this is a long time ago when career fairs existed. It was a career fair specifically for Hispanic students, so it was for the National Society of Hispanic MBAs. And I in the career fair, I happened to meet a recruiter from Microsoft, which wasn't a part of my plan in the career fair. And that recruiter invited me to an event, and we started talking. They invited me then to go to the booth, and I did some interviews there. And then I did an interview here in Redmond, Seattle area, where the headquarters are, and eventually we're able to get an offer to join the company in the finance side. So when I get to join the company, I find out that I was going to be the finance support for one of the engineering teams on the gaming side, namely Xbox. So I was specifically, that was my introduction into gaming, and that's how I got into actually be part of the gaming industry. So it wasn't really something that I directly. And also back then, gaming was totally different than it is today, and I would venture to say it was smaller as well as a business. But that's kind of like the journey that got me into gaming. And then I started my journey in Microsoft, specifically in Xbox, supporting the engineering team that developed all the accessories. And that probably took me my first 3 or 4 years in the company. And then after that, an opportunity came up so I could join the actual engineering team, but doing more of different roles around business and strategy, product portfolio management, and business strategy, And even at some point, I was able to also join and manage what we call the Design for Xbox team, which is a licensed program for all the third-party accessories manufacturers that are licensed, like Razer and Logitech and SteelSeries and some of those other partners. I was able to be part of that team for a long time as well. And so in the middle of my career, I decided to pursue a different adventure. So I actually left the company. And when I left the company in 2019, my family and I went on a sabbatical to Spain. And we thought it was going to be a few months. And that was December of 2019. And then February of 2020, we got a little gift that everybody got. And we ended up staying in Spain for 3 years. And during that time, I had the opportunity to actually work with a startup in the esports world. And back then, it was a startup, an American startup that had investment from the US, but also had some ventures in Spain. So we were able to buy, at that time, the biggest amateur or semi-professional Call of Duty league that existed at the time. And I'm talking about pandemic, really at the start of the pandemic, so 2020. So that was a very interesting experience, and for probably about 2 years was working on that project. And then, as a lot of things happened during the pandemic, the business couldn't sustain, and we decided to divest from it. And then after, I would say, a few other projects, my family and I decided to come back to the U.S. and come back to the Redmond area, where I started doing some consulting work as well, and had the great opportunity to actually join Microsoft again in the Xbox team. And I've joined since December of 2024, so probably about a year and a half ago. And that's where I'm at right now. So I'm a director in business operations for the Xbox hardware team. So what that means is the engineering team that manufactures all the hardware for Xbox, so the consoles and the accessories. And I'm in a team that I'm from a business operation perspective. It's kind of like a long story, but that's kind of like my gaming story so far.
Wow, that's amazing. Flavia, I cannot hear you.
Oh, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Like, that's a great story. Like, I have so many questions, but something that I'm thinking right now, like you coordinate teams and products. Like, how early in your career, what was the key experience that shaped your leadership?
Sorry, that I cut off a little bit at the end.
Your,
That experience that shaped what?
shaped your leadership.
Wow. So I personally, I don't think that's necessarily one moment. I think it's something that you keep building over time, over your life. And I would go as far as even when I was a little kid, doing martial arts and in karate. And then I had opportunity to actually teach the classes for the little kids. Like, I think your experiences over time keep building and keep shaping you and giving you all those skills for leaderships. I think it's just a continuous process, and also it's a continuous process of learning. And how do you keep adapting, and because there's different styles and different ways to lead, right? Sometimes you can actually be the lead by example. Sometimes you can lead by just encouraging people or a servant leader. So I don't necessarily think it's one experience, but there are definitely occasions that kind of like really teach you or help you grow from a leadership perspective. Yeah.
Like,
Hey.
do you feel like your leadership changed over time? Because I don't know how your team is or teams, but like I think age difference can be something like leaders today tends to have some difficult to deal, like the some age gaps. I don't know if you go through it, but like how your leadership change over time, or if the some age gaps for leaders, do you think like it's difficult or not?
Um, I that's an interesting question. So I personally, this is my personal experience. I think I'm very comfortable working with people of different ages. I always been. So and actually I can give you an example through my nonprofit work. So I'm a member of a nonprofit. It's called the United States Esports Association. Essentially, I'm the grandfather of that organization, meaning the leaders and the team that runs the day-to-day operation is just much younger than myself, right? But I subscribe to the theory that no matter who you are and which team you're part of, there's always that dual interaction and dual way where you can, both parts can actually help each other to achieve whatever that we need to achieve, right? Now, would that mean that based on my personal experience, because, assuming that I'm the older person, I've seen other things happen in the past and then I can provide that insight? Yes, that's possible. But also on the other side, you know, in my experience, a lot of the younger generations, they have a whole bunch of different skills that I didn't grow up with, that also equally adding to that relationship. So I think age is one of those that, if I think from your question perspective, is both. It's kind of like sometimes maybe ego gets into that. Like there's sometimes people that say, oh no, because I'm younger than you and I have, this and that experience, then I know what it is and I don't need your. Or the other way around, the let's say the more experienced person will say, oh, I've done this 100 times and you need to listen to me, right? So I think ego will be part of that, but I do subscribe to having that interaction where I do believe that, as they say, 1 + 1 is 3 and you can get there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would like to know about the transitioning of your career. You came from a traditional job, like you said, you came in the financial part of Xbox first, and then you moved to sports and in the Xbox area, right? So how was for you and this transition from like a traditional job to a sports job? And also, how is for you the sports today? Is just professional or you is also a hobby for you?
Okay, so let me try to. What I heard the question was, there's a part of the transition from quote traditional job into gaming or
Mhm. Yes,
esports.
yeah.
That's one, and the other part that I heard is esports more of a hobby or a professional interest? I think it was the last part of the question, right?
Yes, if it's just professional for you, or if you have any hobby in the sport, if you like, if you play something.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So let's go through the first
Right.
part. So I think I will add an element here of also cultural element, because obviously I'm born and raised in another country and I ended up working here in the US and under the gaming industry, right? So I think a couple of things. One is gaming companies are nothing more than companies, right? Like any other company in the world. So what that means is that you need actually people to execute different kinds of jobs, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's engineering, whether it's legal work. Like all of those things are common to any company, right? Whether you have more of them or less of them, whether it's a big company or small company, those are the things that you need. So the way that I got into the company and to gaming was through finance. So that's how I entered, right? Being good with numbers, understanding numbers, analysis, scenarios, products. And then that's an element of kind of like skill and the function that you're put to it. Now, there's another element that you have to bring in, which is also, getting to understand your industry and to understand the market that you're playing, getting to understand your product portfolio, getting to understand business unit, all of those things, right? So that's super key and important as well. So I think there's a notion out there and where a lot of people think that gaming is just game developers go and code and or be an artist and be part of the gaming. And I think, and my experience shows that's not necessarily true. Like, I have so many different people and colleagues and co-workers that I know throughout the industry that they've gone to school and have nothing to do with gaming, right? But the key thing is you have to be able to execute on some sort of role or some sort of function that you're interested in, and do the best that you can. And if you wanted to be in gaming, then you can actually try to pursue that, but you don't necessarily have to start directly in gaming. You can start in any other kind of company, like I did. I started in the consumer product goods with Procter and Gamble. I was working on a manufacturing plant where they were doing detergent, right? So Ariel and in Venezuela, Ace. I don't know if in Brazil they have Ace. Ariel as a detergent, I know they have in Brazil, but I don't know the local brands. Here in the US, Ace is Tide. But I started on that, and I started on the finance function, and those skills are transferable to a gaming industry, right? So I think that's one thing. If there's a word of advice that I would give to the people that are trying to get into gaming, is like, think that you're not necessarily have to go straight in. There are many different ways of how to get into the gaming industry. The most important thing is that you are good at what you're doing, whether you chose to be an engineer, an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer, a software development engineer, or if you chose to be a legal, a lawyer, corporate lawyer, if you chose to be a finance person, just keep improving on that and then find a way to get into the industry. Other ways is a lot of people think that you need to get straight in as a full-time employee, but I've seen many cases where you can get in as also what is called a consultant or a contractor, where you're helping doing projects and start to gain experience, and then eventually that can help you and lead you into getting into a full-time position into a gaming company as well. So that, I think that's the first part of the question. Now, the second part of the question was around esports and what esports means for you. So I will use a story here to answer that part. So when I think it's around 2015 or 16 or 17 when esports was starting to get very big into the mainstream. I personally was playing tennis, recreational tennis for adults and professional adults, that on the weekends and on Fridays we'll just go and play together in different teams and organized tennis competitions, right? One year, our team from where I used to play here locally, our team got to go to what is the nationals competition here in the US. So not that we're very good. It was just that we are part of like they put categories and different rankings. So our team was locally, and then we played regionally, and eventually got to a national experience. That experience is very similar, whether it's in Brazil, whether it's in Venezuela, whether it's in the US, and is very applicable. So you can do it in soccer, in football, you can do it in volleyball, in basketball, in any sports. When that happened and I had that experience and I was already in the gaming industry, I was thinking, I don't see that exists for esports. Now you have to think this is 10, 15, 10 or about 10 years ago. And that's when I said, I'm interested in trying to figure out how can we do that for the esports industry. How can we start setting up some sort of way where we start taking kids on, on the recreational side and how we offer them. And not, I shouldn't say kids, I should say families, because it's really a family endeavor. When you're 6, 7, 8 years old, you don't start going to the football academy by yourself. It's a family thing. The parents are there to support you, and you start going that way, right? And at that time, esports was very top centric, meaning it was all about the professional scene and the teams and the leagues, and everything was new and the hype was there. But when you go down the pyramid, start looking at what is that journey that starts for a 6-year-old that desires to be an esports player, there was nothing. And in some way, I would argue that still 10 years later, that infrastructure is not all set up either. There are different pockets, but we need way much more collaboration. And I think the layer that we're missing right now is that bottom layer for families to actually start the journey for so many reasons that we can get into. So that's an area of passion for me. Now, am I an esports player? No. Am I a huge gamer? I am not. I am actually very bad at it, but I enjoy racing games. That's the area that I can play very badly with a lot of different, let's say, settings to make it very easy. But if you put me to an F1 game or a Forza or something like that, it's something that I would enjoy.
Wow, that's great. I love racing games too, so I understand you, but I'm too bad.
Yeah, like I'm not very good playing, but I think the goal is to have fun.
Exactly.
So it's
Oh, I think.
Yeah, she's with it.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
okay, so I
actually
have a question.
no,
Feedback?
hello, I'm not listening to anyone.
Okay. So, you're a director on business in Xbox. How is for you, um, if you could tell us about how it works a little bit and what is your role? Actually, what you have to do. You don't need to say any details, but just so we can have an idea about what you do and how this connect with gaming.
Yeah. So I'd be very generic with this for obvious reasons. But a
Yeah.
director of business operations. Business operations is a very broad subject, and it can mean many different things between different companies or between even different departments within the company, right? What that means specifically for me, for what I do, is I'm part of a bigger team, which, like I said, the engineering team that develops all the consoles and accessories for all the hardware for Xbox. You have different functions within that, but there is a supporting, let's say there's a supporting team that actually supports all of the different areas, the engineering teams, the product teams, and that is for different things, whether it's for what is called the rhythm of the business, which is the rhythm of doing the different activities that we have on a recurring basis, or whether it's to coordinate projects. So project management, it's a really big one. So in my case specifically, I also have a focus on let's say what is called business intelligence, so analytics and reporting. So from the perspective of making sure that the organization and in this case the supporting teams have access to the information that they need to actually make decisions on a daily basis. So once you get into a, in this case, a big organization, then the same way that you have someone think about a product and what is the next product that I need to design and what are the next things that I need to do, there's also people that are thinking, okay, what are the different kinds of informations that we need, that, and how do we actually get them, because they could be coming from different places, right? How do we facilitate that? How do we bring it in? And how do we actually help inform or provide the information that we need? So in my case, my business operations role is very around project management. And this is not necessarily project from the sense of product development per se, but it's just, projects that are pretty much short in time, or projects that are not necessarily related to a specific project, but are more support projects on how do we support the organization and how do we keep things moving, how do we keep the processes going, and how do we solve problems. A lot of times there's suddenly problems that pop up, and then you suddenly don't have someone to come in, and then how do you roll your sleeve and then try to figure out how to solve problems, right? That's essentially what it is. So I know it's very vague, but at the same time, is that. I mean, business operations is like, depending on what the business is, then there is something that you needed to maintain to keep continuing progress, and then how do you support that function?
All right, thank you.
Great. So I'm sorry, I don't know what happened with my internet. So something that I was saying that before, like you do not need to be a gamer to enter in the environment of gaming. Your background's very good, like to tell people, because people do think that you need to be a gamer to work with games, and that's not true. So you work in one of the biggest companies in the world. Like, I don't know if you can say it, but like how it was the process for joining Microsoft, like how it is for anyone that wants to try.
That's an interesting question, because the first time I joined the company, I would say the process was totally different than what would it be today, right? And this time around, when I joined the company, the last year and a half ago, it's I'm trying to put the right words. It's a different process, but I also had, let's say, a network, and I also had contacts that are really important a lot of times to help you find an opportunity. So I think it depends also on where in your career you are. So I'm gonna give an example for someone young, right? So young meaning starting early in their career. Let's say someone that is in for example, in the university and wants to start. So and I'm going to talk more about the experience here in the US, because it's what I have closest and what I've seen. But in the US, it's very helpful, and it's very well established that you can do internships. Or I don't know if in Brazil you call them prácticas. In Spanish, you call them, in Venezuela, you say pasantías or prácticas, which is essentially an internship. So it's established that a lot of different companies, whether they're big or small, they provide summer internships. And those are great opportunities for someone that is going to the university in finance or in marketing, or to train as an engineer, to actually join a company and start learning, start doing, what is called in real life projects, or start learning, having that experience. So that in itself, if you think about it, if university in Venezuela is 5 years, in the US is 4 typically. I don't know in Brazil.
It is full.
How many? It's 4. So think about it. If you take 3 of those summers or 4 of those summers and do internships, you already have 3 or 4 different projects that you had experience that you can start building, right? So that not only helps you with experience, but helps you with a network. And a lot of times, some of these internships, if you do a good job, then you have a high likelihood that you could be offered a job. So that's one way to enter. Another example is something I alluded to earlier, which was around consulting or project work, right? Short-term work. Like suddenly you come in and say, hey, this company needs help, well, commonly known as vendors or contractors. which is contingent staff, which is like saying, hey, company A needs help with someone to cover for a maternity leave. That's a common example, right? Where someone is on maternity leave and they need someone, or a paternity leave, and someone needs to come in for 4 or 5, 6 months to help. That's another way to start getting experience. And a lot of times by doing some of those, you end up being offered or being able to join a company on a full-time basis. So those are two examples. And if you are more mid-career or later in your career, then that's where your network or networking is very important. So always keep networking, always keep adding different contacts and people to your network, not because of you're going to ask for a job, just because it's key, because you never know what kind of opportunities will come out of that. And I'll give you examples. I've had experiences in my life where through my network, I have found somebody or a company that helps me provide a service, in the context of working professionally. But then that same company or that same person, actually, I worked with as a business partner or as even an employee for that same contact. So always, you never know how things will turn. But the point is, you always want to keep building your network, and you always want to, um, keep as good as relationship with you can with everybody, because you don't know exactly when and how opportunities will come to you.
Like, that's very cool, because networking is something that many of our guests say that is like very, very important. And about the summer problem, that I like, that's very cool. That's very great. But that's not something that happens in Brazil. I don't know. I never heard of it. It's a little bit different here. Like, we have like a early job that we call like estágio. Like, it's a
Internship?
Internship, yeah.
like in companies, or something that we call like jovem aprendiz. There's like I don't know how I would translate it, but
It's
like,
a apprentice.
yeah,
Yeah.
but nothing like to do just in summer. It's more like some month jobs like in the year.
Yeah.
So very, very great to see others
But
experience.
it's the same principle, because apprenticeship is usually, yeah, it could be a longer term, but I've seen cases where even in other countries, they have different structures. But I'll give you an example. My experience in Venezuela. In Venezuela, when I was going to university, my last year of the university, I did both. I did an apprenticeship or a pasantía, and I also did a project. What in Venezuela we used to call it thesis, not thesis, or it's the final project for the university. So both of those I did in Procter and Gamble. So during my last year I did a Procter and Gamble at a detergent plant. So that experience on the last year of my university was the one that gave me and offered me the opportunity to join Procter and Gamble as a full-time employee. So even those apprenticeships that you're talking about, or even if you have a thesis that if you are in a project that you want to do it in a company, those are the kind of doors that gets open. And like, again, I don't know Brazil and I don't know how it works, but I lived it in Venezuela and I also lived it here in the US. That process of going through an internship, because when I was doing my master's business degree here in the US, I actually did an internship at Dell, the company Dell.
Wow.
I ended up not working at Dell. I ended up working at Microsoft, but those opportunities are there. But intention and action, like the individual, the person has to really want to do this and be motivated to go after these opportunities because they exist.
It's great. How do you see the relationship between gaming, education, and careers evolve over the next decade for you?
Over the next
For everyone.
decade,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think again, for me, an area of passion is helping. I think there's a lot of misconceptions with gaming, um, and a lot of those misconceptions with gaming, I think it starts from what gaming is, which mostly is being marketed as a entertainment industry. Um, for me personally, I think there's a lot of education and collaboration that we can do to help families understand what gaming is and can be for that family and for the individuals going, you know, into their journey. And that's even broader than that. That goes to digital parenting, and I'm going through that process as a parent and trying to figure out how and what I want to educate my child on the digital world. That gaming is one of those vectors within the digital world, right? It tends to be digital, but the experiences and the skills that you actually can learn through gaming are invaluable. Are something that I don't think there is enough education out there, and I would say content and collaboration and even elevation and celebration of how important that is and can be, um, for actually parents to embrace it. Also, embrace it in a way that it's for each family to decide, how much time and what kind of games, and following, like, you don't want a 8-year-old using games that are rated, 13, 15 and 17
Yes.
years old and all of those things. But that's something that I feel that there's a lot more to be done, and hopefully that will help us turn a lot of that toxicity and a lot of that bad reputation that the industry has into how do we actually integrate that. And one example that I like to make is, I like to think about the lifespan of a gamer. So think about it this way: if you're 8 years old, and then when you're 80 years old, on both ends and everything in the middle, you're going to be a gamer. It's not going to be the same way. You start as a 8-year-old, you may start playing, a Minecraft, and just focus on fun and doing different things. But as you continue to go throughout your life and your journey, that's going to be shaped different ways. And eventually, when you're 80 years old, hopefully you're going to be playing with your grandkids and you're understanding how that goes. And then you have
Yes.
multiple generations on that. So even painting that picture of the lifetime of a gamer, I think is very powerful, and it's something that we should be doing more. And that requires a lot of collaboration in the industry to make sure that we can start talking and painting that picture of the lifetime of a gamer and that journey, and how gaming is a core part in each stage of life of that journey.
Awesome. I grew up playing with my parents, so I always had contact with the game. But my parents, they always played together, so they always saw like if they have some message just for safety. So I
Mm-hmm.
think this is good what they do in Brazil in the laws, because they are not allowed more like young kids play games for big kids or talking with other people, because I think for safety this is necessary. The world today is hard for us. It's been really bad about safety, because we saw many cases in Brazil about this case, like a kid meets a person who was playing together, but it's like someone very much older than him. So this kind of things. What is for you like? How you think we can get better in about safety in games? Like how we can protect our children, and how we can connect this with the parents, how they can better understand and trust on games in this part.
Um, so I'm gonna be very narrow on my answer and very from a perspective of my own experience. So
Mhm.
I if I think about my experience, I'm a parent of a small kid, elementary school kid, or middle school is how it's called here. So it's an 11-year-old kid. But at the same time, I have knowledge and experience on the gaming industry, right? So I have to acknowledge that part. But what I'm focused on in my family, what we're focused on is we're raising a human first. So what that means is that's our focus. Now, within raising a human, there's an element that we need to consider, that is technology, because technology is an element that is in our everyday lives. Now, how do we want that technology to show up, and how do we think is the best way of doing that? That's an area that is hard, because that's where, as a parent, there are so many different ways to think about it, and for every single family it's going to be different, right? So what I'm trying to say with this is, yes, there can be laws, there can be a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it needs to be intention and interest and effort from parents to actually be involved and help in that process. That could mean so many different things between household to household. But to me, that's how we think about it in my personal life. And that's how we're not necessarily saying we're right or wrong. We're just trying to navigate it the best that we think we should do, with the principle that we're not raising an AI bot, or we're not raising anything other than a human being. And we want to continue to make sure that that human being, continues to go through this journey of life.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Great. Like you teach about business in games, right? Like how are classes? Like what do you teach to people about business in games? What is different from a normal business?
Yeah, so I've had the opportunity to give few lectures on essentially business operations in the ITTI program. To be honest, I think the only difference is the product, right? So the product, meaning in this case, is gaming. The product as gaming, and it's not cars, or it's not laundry detergent. So, but some of the principles are essentially the same. So, for example, when I taught the business operation class, what we focused on is to say, hey, let's just choose 3 different companies in the industry. So one example was, for example, one of the big accessories manufacturers in the industry. It's a brand called Turtle Beach. And then we chose another couple of companies. One was, I think it was Overactive Media, which is a conglomerate around owning teams and some other entities for esports. And I think the other one was another company. And the reason I chose those 3 was because those were public companies. So you can actually then read some of their statements and understand how they operate. So the class was really focused on, let's use the example of 3 different companies relevant to the industry. So when I say headsets and gaming headsets, you both nodded, so you understand what I'm talking about. So that's kind of like tailored to that company, but also showing them, hey, this company, this is how they're making money, this is how they're spending money, this is how much money they're making or not making. What do you think that means? And what would be the priorities based on what you know now, right? Are you going to continue to spend a lot of money when you know the company has been losing money, or are you going to make different choices? So a lot of these principles of business operations, it's the difference really is the product, is where you are. But at the end of the day, no company survives if you're not profitable, right? It's a series of inputs meaning, if you want to simplify it in currency signs, dollar signs or reals or whatever, what have you, like if what you get in is less than when you get out, that means that, okay, how how am I going to continue to operate, right? So that was the focus of that class, and saying, hey, we have 3 different companies. There's 3 different ways they participate in the gaming industry, and let's have discussions around what would you do differently, what do you think this means, and that's kind of like the logic of what that class was about.
Very good.
So, what advice do you have for who wants to start a sports career or also Microsoft? What is your advice for us?
Wow. So okay. So a lot of things, right? So one is get good at something. Like if you're passionate or if you're interested in numbers or in helping people or in coordinating projects, whatever you think your education is going to be around, go all in on that. Learn as much as you can on that. Execute on that. Also, nowadays, there's so much. Nowadays, there is what they call skill stacking, which is you can learn, and I see it when I talk to a lot of my younger counterparts. Like for you, even for you guys, it's natural, creating. You're creating content right now. You are moderating. You know how to edit this. You know how to post it. You actually have a product that you guys participate on, and this is podcast, right? But then you probably are doing some of the marketing material yourself, right? The assets. So you're probably going to Canva, you're probably creating like all of these little things are stacking different skill set that, if I think about it nowadays versus when I was a lot younger, that wasn't the case. We didn't have all of these different ways to learn things. It was more about you kind of like choose something and you keep going on that. And essentially what I'm saying is like, there are different ways today that you can build your skill set, right? There's no right or wrong. There is a skill set that you want to educate yourself in. Let's say, for example, if you choose to be someone that wants to do marketing and you're very passionate about that, so go and learn as much as you can of that. But also, there's so many different other things that you can do on the side, which this might be a hobby for you or might be your job. I don't know. But the point is, like, you also have this whole bunch of skill sets that when you start putting all of them together, you're able to do and not only create something, but then you're able to add value. So be passionate about something and explore it, and also keep in mind that you could be changing that passion and those interests over time. And those are all experiences that will add on. So that's one part of the question. But the other part of the question is be intentional and be empowered that you can actually make this happen. So what I'm saying by that is, like, a lot of people say, oh, I just applied to 2 companies and they never reply back. And okay, what do you do? I just sent out an email. Okay. But there's a lot more that goes into trying to get into working to a company, right? So there is the networking piece, there is the follow-up where you'll be able to contact people through LinkedIn. Have you gone to a local gaming meetup that happens around you in Sao Paulo? Have you gone and talked to other people? Is there a LAN center that you can go and interact and talk to people? Like, there's so many other different things that you can do. It's not linear. It's not, I send an email, I already provided my resume, and I'm waiting for a recruiter to call me. It doesn't work that way.
I learned so much from you today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, actually, I have the last question that, like, many people in Brazil like dreams of working outside, like leaves Latin America as you did. So, like, you are one of those who managed to do it, right? So what's the difficulties, like what you say, like, as advice to for the ones that want to do this path to do the same thing?
Yeah. It's interesting because I did it a long time ago. But I was one of those kids. Like I always had a dream that I wanted to work outside and I wanted to go outside, right? So I understand the question. I think there's different ways to do it. One option is you can join a company in Brazil. And I've seen that. I actually have colleagues of mine, the people that I know that actually worked in Microsoft in Brazil and then had the opportunity to move to the US or to Spain or to another country. So that's one way of doing it. So it's not like you have to go straight to the other country. You can join, a company in Brazil, Sao Paulo and Rio, wherever that company office is, and you can start finding that opportunity that way. Okay, so that's one path. The other path is I was lucky and privileged that I was able to pursue an education outside. So I did that in Spain, and then I was able to do it here in the US. And through that process, I found the opportunity to work and stay here in the US as well. That you can do to Australia, that you can do to Austria or to Spain, like that's kind of like another way of doing it, right? Through that education path. I don't necessarily know if there's a right or wrong, but those are two examples of how to do that. So, but again, that goes back to intention and action. Like if you believe that's something that you have and that's your dream, then you have to start keep pushing towards that. And yes, it's possible, but also there's a benefit nowadays that there's a lot of information available, so you can actually start researching and understanding what it takes to do that. Like, but those are two paths to do. I think that the most important thing is to start getting the experience and the working experience as soon as you can get it. So I would think that starting even in Brazil with, it can be not necessarily an international company, it can be a local company that then gives you and opens the door to join an international company that is in Brazil. And then maybe you don't get to go to the US first, but maybe they send you from Brazil to Chile, or maybe they send you from Brazil to Mexico. And then from there, you find another opportunity, you keep moving. So all of these things can happen, but you have to get your foot on the door first. So you have to start somewhere, right?
Like, thank you so much, Miguel. Like, it's the end of our talk. But I will talk with you like for more hours, but like we can't. It's already our time. But thank you so much for our talking. I think Marcelo is coming back to